The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Genova, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Genova.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host, every Saturday right here at 10 o'clock. And today we have a fella in my studio. His name is Dick Kaplan, and he was recommended to come on the show by, well, Brother Weeze, which is somebody I guess you've known for a long time, right?
Oh, yeah. We've known each other since we were 6 years old.
Yeah, and so you knew him even before he was in the service and the radio and all this other stuff. Well, that's really cool. You shared a bunk.
Yeah, we were at camp again in the Adirondacks together, and his bunk was right next to mine.
Yeah. Well, he says you have a compelling story about a couple of different things. One is the caring thing, which is explain that just in short.
Caring is a new system for how people in democracies can help each other, and it gets into the philosophy of why we're having the problems in this country we're having.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, we were talking before the recording here about the whole way that the system has changed since the country was started and what it has evolved into, and that's a very, very interesting story. But that's not really what you're here for today. You are also in process of developing a company, a process to improve one particular portion of healthcare that is missing and is so I mean, this your story and your idea makes so much common sense that we got a whole other show just for this. So, why don't you tell the story that how you got to start what you are in process of starting, and the story of your son and whatever. It's a very sad story, but this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of these things where something that happened tragically is being developed into something that might be something good for us all. So why don't you start that story?
Okay, I'm number one. I'm on the board of trustees of the University of Rochester Medical Center, which, by the way, is an incredible organization run by incredible people. And I'm on the Quality of Care Committee. I've been on that for I was chairman for a year. And, you know, I used to see the problems people had navigating through the healthcare system, and I would help people from time to time. But I never realized the terror and the helplessness that they feel, because when I get sick or my family gets sick, you know, I've been on the board. I know the doctors, I know nurses, I know my way to navigate through the system, but other people don't. And it is a terrible problem. And I learned that problem through a very tragic part of my family. My son lives in Atlanta, and obviously I don't know people in Atlanta, and he was having trouble with his back, and on July 4th, 2021, he woke up with terrible pain, went into the hospital and had a CT scan, and he was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer. And one of my good friends is a urologist, a very good urologist here in Rochester, and I called him right away, and he got me involved with some people in research at the OVAR, and also we got to a gentleman in Boston at Dana-Farber who actually ran the phase 3 trials for the chemotherapy my son Darren was going on. So, and he had an oncologist down there, so from an oncology standpoint, we're in good shape. So Darren started his cycles. It was every 2 weeks, and the first month he went in for scans, and sure enough, it was shrinking the tumors, and he was doing fine. But after that, he started to have bad side effects, bad nausea, bad diarrhea. Called the doctor told him what to do, and it didn't work. And my son is not like me. I'm a squeaky wheel about stuff. My son is not like that. He never wants to bother people. He's a very strong person, and he figured this was chemotherapy. His doctor told him what to do. He's doing it, but it's not helping, but he's going to gut his way through. And I talked to him every day, and he would never tell me about the problems that he was having. In 6 weeks, he went from 195 pounds to 135 pounds. And he woke up one day just in terrible pain again, rushed him into the hospital. His lungs were filling up with fluid. So he had spent 7 hours in the waiting room. This is when COVID was big in Atlanta, and it was terrible. And nobody was allowed in there. His family wasn't allowed in the hospital, nor was his doctor. Anyway, finally he got up into the cancer ward, and they started him on fluids and put a tube in his lung, coming from his lung, and a pump to pump the fluid out. During that time, he was there 8 days. We couldn't talk to anybody but him. Even his doctor couldn't get through to the hospitalist. It would take a couple of days. So the only person we could talk to was him to find out what was going on, and he really didn't know what was going on. And on the 7th day he was there, they sent a nurse to his house to teach his wife how to use the pump, and he was sent home the 8th day. 3 days later, he got a staph infection where the tube was in his lung. Mm-hmm. Back in the hospital, 6 hours in the waiting room. Finally got him up, went on fluids again, and antibiotics. But during that time, there was no one I could talk to. There's no one he could talk to except his doctor. And his doctor, he didn't want to bother his doctor. The doctor told him what to do. And I was lost, and I was helpless. And I'm not a person that's used to being helpless. But after he went in the hospital the second day, his wife heard about a lady called Sandy Ganzel, her name's Sandy Ganzel, who was a registered nurse. She's a certified rehab nurse. She was in the Air Force for 4 years. She worked for Zurich Insurance for a couple of years, so really knew the healthcare industry. But she got burnt out nursing, as most nurses do. And she started her own company called Medical Consulting Services, which is one person, just her. And she surrounded herself with people in healthcare, physical therapists, occupational therapists, other people that had that she would use to help people. And she became an advocate. And it was all word of mouth. And I called her. My daughter-in-law gave me her number, and I really liked her, and I hired her. Well, she immediately, the first thing she did is got all the HIPAA releases from him and her, and got into his files. And the first thing she did, she called me and said, I don't believe his lungs were filling up from the cancer. She found out that he was bedridden for the last 3 weeks of those 6 weeks that I told you lost all that weight. He never told me, and his wife didn't tell me. They're both very passive people, and they were very strong people, and they didn't want to bother me or bother anybody. And she said that's why his lungs were filling up. So she called his doctor. She met with his doctor, and so the doctor knew she was helping him. And they took the tube out, and sure enough, started him walking and stuff, and it got better. Well, before he got home, he was in the hospital another 8 days. She had occupational therapy twice a week, physical therapy twice a week. She got him an oncology nutritionist. She got him an oncology psychologist because he was in deep trauma. And she got all these things ready. And within 6 weeks, he gained back 45 pounds. They had to take him off his chemotherapy. I didn't mention that because it had ravaged his body in that amount of time. And so she got all these people behind him. And in 6 weeks, he gained back 45 pounds. She got him off all his medication within 3 weeks, his pain medication. He was really doing well. And they were going to put him back on the chemotherapy when he got strong enough. But the problem when you go off your cycles early in chemotherapy, sometimes the cancer can come back even more virulent than it was. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, before they could put him back on, it came back to his brain and his bones, and he passed away within a week.
Oh, my God. How old was he when he passed away?
He was 49.
My Lord.
And, that's very young for kidney cancer.
Yeah. Family, kids?
Yeah, 2 daughters. One was 21 and the other's 19.
Oh, my God.
That was a few years ago.
That's just horrible. Well, we're about ready to head into a break. But the question I want to ask you when we come back is, how did you find this woman? But right after this. This is Dom for my friend John McClurg. John has 2 dealerships, McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevrolet, both in Perry. Hey, you don't buy a car all that often, so when you do, shouldn't you go to a place you can put your trust in? You can depend on McClurg. John's dealerships are family dealerships where people you deal with today are the people you will deal with tomorrow. No nonsense. Go visit them at McClurg ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or McClurgChevrolet.com. This is Dom from my friends at Jack Greco Furniture. You drive your car, you live with your furniture. That's why Nita and I buy our furniture locally from Jack Greco. Hey, lots of old name furniture manufacturers switch to mass production, producing their furniture who knows where. Why settle for that? Jack has quality pieces made by true craftsmen, and if you need a custom piece, Jack can do that for you too. The season's upon us. Jack has quality outdoor furniture you won't find anywhere else. Go to jackgreco.com. Well, welcome back. We're talking to Dick Kaplan, who was telling us about the unfortunate passing of his son down in Atlanta, and Dick is a resident here in Rochester, and how he found this woman, Sandy Ginzel, is it?
Yes.
You were saying?
Yep.
And she started her own company. It was just her. And,
Right.
and it sounds like she's being the advocate, she's being the Sherpa between the doctors and the patient.
Right.
And I can see what you're saying. Now the patient is home, and if he was in the hospital, you have people coming in every couple hours checking on him. But he's home, and he and his wife really don't know how to navigate things, or if something's proper or not. You said something about having a tube and causing a problem, and they don't know it because they're not educated in this. And this woman, Sandy, was quite a big help. So let's keep on going on with that.
Well, Sandy actually became part of the family. That she would sit down and talk to the kids about what they could do to help, and explain to his wife and explain to Darren what was going on, and really became part of the family, which was amazing. And it was like having a part of your family as an expert in your disease. Mm-hmm. So after he passed away, I started to think, what would have happened if Sandy was there from the very beginning? And I talked to my friend here, the urologist. I talked to his doctor down there, and to Sandy. And they all agreed none of that would have happened. She would have never let him get down to 135 pounds. She would have known that was happening while it happened. She could have brought the nutritionist in early. They might have been able to control the side effects, or they could have cut his chemotherapy in half for a while, and that might have done it. There's a lot of things they could have done, and he probably would be alive today. He wouldn't be cured, but he would have lasted longer if she was there. And I don't beat myself up with that because she wasn't around in the beginning and I didn't know about her. But it started me thinking, why can't everybody have a Sandy that needs one? And our system's not set up for that. So I do startups and turnarounds. That's what I've done all my life. And I started thinking of a way we could do this using a non-for-profit company, which we have formed, to create this system. And it's called the Medical Advocates of America. And what we do is it's a membership company. They don't employ the advocates, but the advocate becomes a member. And what MAA does, Medical Advocates of America, is first thing they do in the beginning is create what are the requirements to become an advocate. And what we're working with now, and I'm working with experts. I have an incredible committee that we're thinking you have to have 10 years as a registered nurse. And you also have to agree to further education in advanced pharmacology, advanced nutrition, and advanced in the specialty that you want to be in. And then they have to have the right personality to deliver this with empathy and compassion and intelligence. So that's the first thing they do. The second thing they do is create an IT platform, which has the education services on it, the courses on them that would be certified. It also has the format for patient history. And this is something that that's part of the things they do. There'd be a telemedicine on the IT platform, and the MAA. We have a whole list of things that will be on our website.
So what you're talking about is, and this hasn't been set up yet, but this is your vision. Your vision is to, well, it's not even to. You are starting this startup company, which its goal is to provide somebody who is an intermediary between the healthcare system, which is way overloaded, and the patient who is way undereducated on what they need to do. And I mean, off the top of my head, it sounds like something that makes a lot of sense. It would save a lot of money.
Right. Well, let me give you that.
Because a doctor does, a doctor cannot give you the attention that you need if you are not, in the hospital.
Right. But we added up his hospital bills. It was over $500,000 that it cost the insurance company. And everybody agrees that if Sandy was there in the beginning, he would have never gone to the hospital. She would have never gotten him that bad. And the doctor would have been aware of his situation, which he didn't want to bother his doctor. So it would have saved the insurance companies $500,000. Sandy's $750 a month. So you can imagine. And there are a bunch of things she did. She went in the house. For instance, Darren was laying in bed watching TV, during this time, and he was weak. So she moved the TV out of his bedroom into their spare room and put a chair there. So he's sitting up. That's what caused his lungs to fill up. Another thing, she went in his records and found he was having trouble with his back. I mentioned he was on a muscle relaxant. Well, nobody ever took him off it. She said, "What's this for?" They told her. She called the doctor, and his doctor loved her, by the way. I wanted to get a concierge doctor for him, and his oncologist said, "No, I won't work with them. It gets too confusing." But she loves Sandy. She said, "It's like having my own eyes, ears, and hands on my patient all the time." So that's after 2 weeks, Darren called me. I talked to him every day, and he said Sandy canceled his physical therapy. So I called Sandy, and she said he doesn't need it. He's doing great. I got occupational therapy twice a week. I got the nutritionist. He's fine without it. That saves the insurance companies money, so unnecessary procedures, unnecessary medications. So there's so many ways this is going to save money, in so many ways. One other quick story. The second day he came home, and we after the second hospital stay, and I had hired Sandy, and he was having a terrible night, and his wife was going to call an ambulance to send him to the hospital. She called Sandy. At 11:30 at night, Sandy came over, stabilized him, got him fine, saved an $1,800 ambulance visit, an emergency room visit, and probably a day in the hospital. Probably saved $5,000. Just that one thing, her coming over. So this process is going to save tremendous amount of money, plus the trauma of him going back in the hospital. You can imagine all the things that this can save. And she's so empathetic, and she was so wonderful. That it helped him get through those 6 weeks that she worked with him. He had a decent lifestyle for that.
Well, it seems to make a lot of sense. You have an intermediary between the doctor and the patient, and I mean, the way I look at it, this is one of these learning curve things. I mean, you get put in a situation like this, and you have no idea. I mean, you think about how hard it is just to buy a car.
And you're helpless.
Right. And you just don't know. You need a Sherpa. You need somebody to guide you through this. And it seems another intuitive thing. If you have somebody in there that's doing that, they call it, I guess they call it like boots on the ground.
Right.
So they can tell if they're over medicating themselves on the opioids or they're not getting enough exercise or this. We assume that this problem is being caused by this. But if you were there, you'd realize it's because of this other thing. I mean, that does make a heck of a lot of sense.
It does make sense, and I use the word intimacy, that she knew everything about him. So in finding, coming up with this idea, I asked Sandy 2 questions. The first question I said, how many patients can you take at a time? And she said, I can take 10. She said, if I was a little younger, maybe I could take 12. So these advocates do not have a lot of patients. I mean, doctors have 2,000-3,000 patients. They don't have the time to be intimate with their patients. So, and the interesting thing is the way this sets up from a financial standpoint, and this is so important. The way this works, and we'll get into this a little more detail, but to start, the way it works is that when a doctor wants you to have an advocate, we also, on our IT platform, have an IT platform for the doctor where he has a list of all his advocates. And the advocate doesn't work for the doctor, doesn't work for a hospital, doesn't work for an insurance company. They work for the patient. That's it. But they are affiliated with the doctor's office in their specialty. So when the doctor thinks you need a specialist, an advocate, they'll press a button, find out which one of their advocates is available, and then send your name or the patient's name and number to the advocate. The advocate calls, makes an appointment, and they have an interview, and the patient hires the advocate. And once the advocate is hired, they go through a process and to start it.
Well, we're about ready to head into the news break, but I have a question. You said a word before that's very interesting, intimacy. And we're going to talk about that when we get back.
Okay.
And now here's co-founder of the Rascals, inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Rochester guy, Gene Cornish, to say a word about his favorite team.
This is Gene Cornish of the Rascals. I'd like to think of myself as the Red Wings #1 fan. And speaking of #1, the boys are #1 in the standings right now. Here's this week's schedule.
The Red Wings are home this week. Labor Day, all tickets are just $5. Wednesday is a Cocos Locos jersey giveaway. And Fred Jackson signs autographs. Thursday, Bruce the Bat Dog makes his debut with a Bruce jersey giveaway. For tickets, visit redwingsbaseball.com.
Well, we're back talking to Dick Kaplan. I mean, this is a story. I could imagine years ago that that somebody was saying, well, we should have a yard sale. Well, we'll put it online, and then maybe people can sell their stuff online. Just what we should do? We should do that. We'll call it eBay.
Right.
So I think you have an eBay concept here, something that maybe nobody's ever thought about before, but it has to do with obviously not a failure in the healthcare system, but something that's certainly lacking in the healthcare system. And let's continue a little bit more about that. But you talked about intimacy. This woman that you hired was able to relate to your to your situation, became a friend of the family. So,
right.
But before we go on, let me ask you just a really quick question. How did you meet her? I mean, how did you get her name? The original.
My daughter-in-law was, after Darren went in the hospital the second time, my daughter-in-law heard about her from a friend. That's how Sandy gets her. It's all word of mouth. That won't be the way it will work once Medical Advocate starts. Yeah. The doctor will be able to give the advocate. So
continue on with your story.
So once the relationship is made, the interview, and the patient hires the advocate notifies the doctor then writes an order for two things, or prescription. The first is the initial time limit. How long does the doctor want the advocate? It could be a week, could be a month, depending on the situation and what was going on. The second is the severity level. And this is the amazing thing about this idea. We have three severity levels. One is $500 a month. Now, when I tell this to people, they say, well, you can't do anything in the healthcare industry for $500 a month anymore. Well, yes, you can. The guidelines from MAA to the advocate for $500 a month is you visit the client once a week, at least. Mm-hmm. You do a telemedicine once a week. And you're available for phone 24/7. Now, Sandy's deal with my son and their family was anytime before 10 o'clock, they could call her anytime. After 10 o'clock would be for emergencies, and that's fine. To give you an idea of the intimacy of this, his wife, the first week and a half, Sandy told her, I want to know any change in Darren that happens. You call me and let me know. And she didn't call for the first week and a half. Again, she's very passive, didn't want to bother Sandy. Sandy said, okay, what we're going to do is you're going to call me every day at 6 o'clock. And you're going to tell me how your day went and how Darren's day went. And if you don't call me at 6, I'll call you at 5 after. She did that for a week and a half. His wife got in the habit of calling, so she didn't mind calling. Anyway, so that's just part of the intimacy. But so that the first level is $500 a month. Mm-hmm. The second is $1,200 a month, which is 2 to 3 visits a week, and also the telephone and the telemedicine. And the third is $2,400 a month, which is 5 days a week. Now, those second two, the $1,200 and $2,400, are just temporal. You don't need your advocate coming twice a week usually, maybe for the first couple of weeks. There was an instance that one neonatal doctor, as I've talked to many people about this, said, if you want to see terror, you look at the faces of parents when I tell them they have to take their baby home with a trach or a stomach feeding tube. They beg me. They're in panic. They beg me, please don't do this. We can't handle it. Well, if they could get, this would be a $2,400 one, where they come every day.
Or an end of life thing, I would think.
Well, that's
right?
true. Well, yeah, that would be happening. You might. Well, no, even end of life. Yeah, you'd want them there 5 days, probably 5 days a week. But there's hospice for that. But for these parents with the baby, the advocate could come for a couple hours every morning for the first 2 weeks. It would cost, for the first 2 weeks, only be $1,200, which is not that much money, and get them through it, and plus phone calls. So that's an idea of how the severity level works. Now, this is the amazing thing. Sandy said she could take 10 patients. So if an average advocate had 2 patients at $2,400 a month, 2 at $1,200 a month, and the rest at $500 a month, they would average about $1,000 a patient. Mm-hmm. That's 10 patients. That's $10,000 a month that the advocate makes. Mm-hmm. That's $120,000 a year. And their only expense is it's $3,500 a year to be a member of MAA, and they give all the services that they give, which I didn't go over all of them, and their gas, basically. So this makes so much sense from a financial standpoint. Now, this would be a good for-profit company. I could do this. But the reason I'm doing this is to help the people that can't afford this and everything. And that's why the insurance companies have to do this. And that's our goal. We're going to start this when we get the insurance companies to go along with this. And to do that, we want to do a pilot.
Well, it sounds like it's something that at least they're going to listen to you.
Yes.
I mean, because it would save money on their part, and it sounds like it saves a lot of angst on the family's part. And if you could get the insurance companies, a Medicaid or Medicare, to pick up even a portion of this, I think it would be.
Well, it's so cheap.
Would it be possible for them to do a portion of it and not the whole thing? I mean, I don't know how these things work.
Well, this is interesting. At $500 a month, when Darren was sick, the insurance company was sending a nurse to him every week anyway, but it was a different nurse. They were very nice and everything, but nobody picked up that he was losing all that weight because they didn't weigh him, and they never talked to his daughters or his wife or anything. They didn't become intimate at all. But this is taking the place of that, so it's not going to be any extra money. As a matter of fact, I would bet that $500 a month is far less than they were paying once a week for the nurse to come there.
Well, the other thing is, it's like when you call a doctor, and if your doctor doesn't happen to be in, you're talking to whoever's on call, right? And the person is not on call. They don't really know. They don't know what the things that are going on. Everybody has that situation. You call somebody and how long has it happened? How do you feel now as opposed to the last time? Well, if you were talking to your doctor would have all this stuff in their head already.
Well, can we go through here? Let's do the business cases for each thing. The insurance companies we already went over are going to save a fortune with this.
Oh yeah.
And the procedures, unnecessary medications and everything, they'll be out of the way. So for the insurance companies, they're going to make a fortune. We have to prove that to them. Let's talk about the doctors. Your doctor spends all day taking care of their patients, and then at the end of the day, they got to call the patients that called in, or the PA has to call. And that's usually a 20-minute call. They got to listen to the people, try to figure out what's wrong, and then try to tell them what to do. There was actually a study done to see how much of a conversation with your doctor you actually remember, and it's 15%, almost nothing. So when the doctor tells them what to do, he or she is not even sure that they're going to do it right. Under this, the patient doesn't call the doctor. The advocate calls the doctor. They know the doctor. They're affiliated with the office, so they know who they are. It's a 2-minute conversation. The advocate tells them exactly what's wrong, and they decide what they want to do, and the doctor's got confidence it'll be done properly. So the doctors that we've talked to love this. This is something very special. And if there is something wrong with the patient, going wrong, the advocate can call in before the patient would have.
Well, I mean, there's nothing like a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? I mean, so you're talking to your doctor over the phone, and you say, well, my husband looks listless. Right. Well, what does that mean? I mean, how does he look? How does he feel? How can he get out of bed? But if somebody's there looking at that, right? I mean, it's all the difference in the world. I would think,
because the advocate is a specialist in whatever you have. Probably 90% of the questions the advocate could answer. So this takes tremendous pressure off the doctors. And again, the advocate would pick something up that you might not even see. So. For instance, I was talking to an orthopedic surgeon who said, I would love this because, number one, it would save me a lot of time because the advocate could answer most of the questions. But what's more important is sometimes people don't call me immediately. If it starts getting red or they get some pain, they wait 3 days, then they call me. By that time, I got to put them in the hospital. He said if the advocate went the day after the surgery, looked at it, then did a telemedicine the next day, they would catch 90% of the problems, and we could solve this. So it would save money, again, for the insurance companies, but save the patient, the anguish. So the next thing would be a business plan would be for the nurses. So...
this whole thing makes common sense. I mean, I can see this like going back to a startup. I mean, man, I have to tell you that you got something here. Well, we're heading into another break, and we will be talking with you, well, after the break. This is Dom for my friend Jim Shelley and his Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage in Lyman, New York. Like I say, a short scoot down 390 to exit 10, make a left at the light. A couple miles down the road, there's Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. You can see their nightly shows by going to fanaticspub.com, but this time of the year, his patio is open for free entertainment 3 to 6 on weekends. Go! It's a great place. Hey gang, this is Dom. This section of the show is sponsored by, well, me. A couple of things here. One is now you can go to nononsenseroundtable.com and see a list of businesses that I use. They're listed under, well, businesses that I use, and I don't charge to be on that page, nor do I take endorsement fees. It's just places I can recommend. Next, if you like the idea of being a sponsor of one of the sections, it's affordable.
Go to NoNonsenseRoundtable.com and contact me there.
Welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here today talking with Dick Kaplan, who has a startup idea, which I have to tell you, it sounds intuitively this thing would absolutely work. We're talking about a company that would hire nurses to be advocates for people that are in need of that, having problems where they're at home with home care and providing a service that he had experience with was only with one person years ago. So,
remember, this is a not-for-profit company, but remember, they don't hire them; they're members.
Okay.
So they don't. The MAA does not tell the advocate what to do. The advocate is a self-employed.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the owner of a company treats their clients a lot better than a salesman or anybody, because it's their name on the door. So these advocates will have, and I know this is the way it happens, a lot of pride in what they do.
This is like an Uber thing.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. Okay, I gotcha.
And their patients come from the doctor's office, or offices they're affiliated with. So we talked about the advantages financially for the insurance company, the advantages for the doctor, the nurses. Right now, nurses, I think, are one of the most unappreciated segments.
Oh, amen, brother. I got to tell you.
They're overworked, they're unappreciated, and they make $70,000 to $90,000 a year, a regular nurse, which is not bad, but under this, and they get burnt out. This is the main thing. Mm-hmm. That's why Sandy did it. It's a burnout kind of job. With this, a nurse will work for 10 years, get burnt out, go through this, but after 10 years, they can become an advocate, and making $120,000 a year, and doing what they went to nursing for. The second question I asked Sandy is, I asked her, do you get burnt out? And she said to me, let me remind you of something. Every time you would talk to me to either start or end the conversation with Sandy, you have been such a godsend to my son and our family. And I said to her once, if you never do another good thing for another human being as long as you live, for what you did for my son and his family, you're going to go to heaven. Mm. And she said, how do I get burnt out? She said, I get inspired every day I work. These are my family. These are my people. So all of a sudden, a nurse is making more money and gets in a job that they really are doing what they got into nursing to do, to help people.
And I imagine she's pretty much making her own hours too.
Yeah, and as they grow older, if they want to go to 3 or 4 patients, they can do that. So, they don't have, with all that great experience, they don't have to stop completely. There's so many domino effects of this system. One is that they think it'll cut down on malpractice, because now you have somebody in between that you might have more than one doctor, and they don't have time to read everybody's paper, what they're doing, the epic, but obviously the advocate does, so they think it'll do that. The opioid crisis, a doctor said to me, this should cut down the opioid crisis, and I remembered how adamant Sandy was and obsessed with getting him off his pain drugs as soon as possible without hurting him. And she did. She got him off in 3 weeks. So all these domino effects of this program are the big things. And it doesn't hurt. Everybody wins.
Well, and you started this company already.
Well, we formed the company.
Okay.
I don't want to start this.
You don't have. Yeah, you
I want the insurance companies to do this.
Right.
As I said, it could be a for-profit.
Well, they say that the trip of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right. and I disagree with that. I disagree. It starts with an idea.
Right.
Okay. First, you have to have the idea that you want to take the trip. Right. But this idea that you have is pretty much formed already. I mean, and there's a website you can go to. Right. I mean,
it's medicaladvocatesofamerica.org. And I have an incredible committee of some of the most knowledgeable.
Well, let's repeat that.
Knowledgeable people. Okay, it's.
This is radio. Yeah, medicaladvocatesofamerica.org.
Yeah, just spell that out.
Yeah, it's better than having a couple of letters. Medicaladvocatesofamerica.org.
Yeah. And that's the name of the organization.
Yeah, and I can see all the development and the people on your board. Oh my Lord!
Right, we have some of the most influential and knowledgeable people on healthcare, and they're not just on the board because they're interested. They're excited about this. And I've talked to 200 or 300 people in this region, people from around the country, and everybody I talk to is excited about this. This is going to change healthcare. This is going to save so much money and take so much pressure off the system itself. Less hospitalizations, shorter hospitalizations. The nurses at the hospital that I had talked to after Darren passed away, but I did talk to them, said if they knew that Sandy was there, they would have let him go 3 or 4 days earlier. They wouldn't have had to send a nurse over to show his wife how to use the pump. All those things, the domino effects of this are so good, and especially for the patients and their family.
Well, I mean, the learning curve, and anybody who's been involved with anybody in the hospital is that. I mean, you're just lost. You're lost, and your anxiety level is high, and you don't know what to do, and it's hard for you to make a decision if there's somebody that you know and you trust and has that relationship. And that's what I see with this, is that you're talking about somebody that you have an intimate relationship with. I think that's a great word for that. And then from week to week, they can see the differences that somebody over the telephone or doing a teleconference can't see.
There's no intimacy in the healthcare system anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not the insurance company's fault. It's not the hospital's fault. It's not the doctor's fault, not the nurse's fault. It's the systemic problem.
Wow.
And that's what we're solving.
Well, years ago, you used to have house calls from your doctor.
Right.
I mean, they can't do that anymore. They can't. Right. They can't keep a system running like that with that type of.
Well, now you do, because the advocate's doing the house calls.
Yeah. No, I can see this.
And so it makes sense from so many different things. I do startups and turnarounds. That's what I've done my whole life, and this just came to me, after Darren passed.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But you see that so many times when something happens that is tragic. Yeah, something good could come out of it. Which, I always say, I know people here probably, every month I mention the Jackie Robinson quote that life has little meaning except on the effect it has on other lives. So
Right.
You're a little bit where you can take something and provide something that's missing and that people don't even know. I mean,
Right.
who thinks about this? But it's a great idea, and that's the thought.
When people go to our website, they'll see there's an explanation of this and everything. There's a second page that gives the definition of an advocate. And the last thing on there is the advocates are the angels among us.
Yeah. Well, and quite frankly, I don't think there's anybody who becomes a nurse and does it for the money.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, there's something there that you added something to the world. First responders and nurses and doctors. I mean, you do it for the greater good, right?
Nurses are underpaid and underappreciated, and this gives them some. It's like going to work for a company you can get promoted in. All of a sudden, if I get burned out, I can become an advocate. And the way this will evolve is after 5 or 6 years in nursing, they decide they want to become an advocate. They'll choose their specialty. They'll call MAA, and the MAA will fix them up with a clinic that they get in. They won't work for the clinic or be affiliated at that point until they're 10 years, but they can start learning about their specialty, taking courses. So when 10 years comes, they're ready to go.
Well, we only have about another minute left, but is there anything you want to put in that minute?
What we need and what we want is this has got to come from the people, grassroots. So if people will go to our website, and we have a little petition type thing to sign and say that, yes, this is something I want. Because we need to go to our representatives because Medicare and Medicaid have to be involved with this. So this is what people can do right now. And we're going to be we're applying for funds now for a pilot, a 1-year pilot. And we'd hope the government might help us with that also. So people can help now by going to our
Medical
website,
Advocates of America,
and just sign their name that they want to help and that they believe in this,
and contact you, whatever. The whole idea here is that it's a startup.
Yep.
It's not fully functional yet, but we're hoping to make it fully functional. And I think, not for nothing, it makes so much common sense.
Yeah. And on the website, they'll see much more detail of what MAA will do and what the advocates' functions are. It explains it a lot more in detail.
And you've done how many startups?
I've done 22. I've taken over. I've done startups and taken over 22 companies. In my life.
Yeah. So I know now why Wheeze sent you to me, because this is a great story. So thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Medical Advocates of America .org. And go there, check them out, and see what you think. I think it's a great idea. So until next week, it's the No Nonsense Roundtable right here at 10 o'clock.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.